Thank you for joining us, everyone, for our second online Convergent event for the year. It's upgrade time, upgrade time. We all know that this happens in the world of networking, that our systems grow and change, and there's usually a bit of fun and a lot of challenges when we go through the upgrades that inevitably hit our networks. And this will be a great time for us to just go through and talk about them and think them through, share some of the challenges, the excitement, the downsides, the upsides, and the rewarding aspects of upgrades on our networks. Okay, let's just jump through the usual intro stuff. First of all, let me acknowledge the fact that I'm here on Camaragal land here in Sydney, and I acknowledge elders past, present and emerging, and we give great respect to the people who have owned and been the custodian of this land for thousands of years, and as we do too, as we join with them to support and love this wonderful place. Okay, some housekeeping. Please post your questions that you may have into the chat or Q&A window. We will be sending out a feedback survey to all attendees this afternoon. If you respond, you automatically land into a prize draw. And we've got some great swag, some really good swag that we've got to send out to you. What we want to hear are any improvements to the sessions. We're always playing with the time slot. That's one that's really one question that I've always been wondering about. What is the perfect time slot? When to hold these things to get the information out there and to get people to really benefit from it? So what improvements can you offer for these sessions? One improvement might be a future topic that comes from you. Maybe there's been an upgrade that you want to tell us about, a project that you've got that's fantastic that everybody should hear about, even if it's something that you've learned along the way that maybe you think everybody knows, maybe they don't. So let's just throw it into the content world, mate. It could be good. So member demos and presentations we would love to have more of, or even the old peering socials where everyone says, hey, connect to my network. Let us know, please. Okay, there's a bit of fine print I need to mention here. The IAA board some time ago adopted a code of conduct for our events. And in summary, that code of conduct says, please be respectful in your interactions. We want everybody to be accepting of each other and support each other to participate. We're here to grow the industry, grow the capability and grow the power or the effectiveness of our industry. So please support each other in doing that. If you can't comply with this, we will remove you. And you may appeal that decision, but we're not going to readmit you at this time. So yeah, please play nicely. A few reminders here. We've got a bunch of events coming up throughout this second quarter of the year we are now. Oh, sorry, second half of the year. We've got an IAA Convergent event, a Brisbane social coming up on the 18th of July. We've got an Adelaide event, which is timed to coincide with the opening of the next DC A1 data centre. So we've got a tour organised for that. So folks, if you can make it to Adelaide for that, or if you're in Adelaide, join us and we've got this sort of pre-opening tour, pre-completion tour. It should be great. We've also got, the social, which will follow after that. We've got an event coming up in Sydney to coincide with OzNog. It'll be a short, sweet event between all the other ones that people go to the night before the main OzNog event starts. So just an hour or so we've got in there with some really cool swag, folks. So do register for that. We've got some great stuff in the pipeline there, which will only go to people that attend that event. So that's IAA at OzNog on the 4th of September. And then we've got another event to mark the fact that ACT-IX is turning 10. So our little IX down there in Canberra, we'll have a little event there just to mark that passage. And it will coincide with B-sides. So if you're down there for B-sides, please join us at the ACT-IX event. Registrations are up for all of these on our portal at the moment. So please register there or ping us for an invitation if you're keen to join us. The in-person events are member events. However, if you're a corporate member, then you can invite or register up to 8 guests, and professional members can also bring a friend. So whether that's a professional colleague, your partner, whatever, bring somebody along, and it makes it the more the merrier. And as I said, the feedback survey is going out. Please, folks, fill it in. Okay, I want to introduce Nick now. Nick is the head of my technical team. For those of you who know Nick, you'll know he is a wonderful, capable tinkerer. I'm very proud of what he's done within the organisation. And going through this presentation, I know you'll learn heaps. Nick has been a great asset to our team over the last few years that I've worked with him. He's just well known for sort of building some great things. He'll take it apart and rebuild it and get it going. So here, over to you, Nick. Please give us your prezzo.
Thanks, Narelle. Let me
I could stop sharing.
bite the Zoom portion of the screen again because it's going to be in the wrong spot. And of course, it's now put that bar there and that there. Okay, sorry. Everyone gets to see my ugly mug for a little bit, but I just want to take that as proof that I actually do some work sometimes. That's in situ in a data center where things actually happen. So, okay, that'll do. So I wanted to start by talking about the process because the process is broken. And it's broken because people just don't seem to properly follow it. The reality is you start with careful forecasting and planning to predict your next cycle of upgrades, which is, you know, that oh crap moment when you get the one alert that says your entire network is broken or something is not correct. You then have to define your goals and objectives and plan the upgrade. You know, search the cupboards under the couch, check the car for spare parts. What are you going to do to fix the problem right now? Tendering and procurement. You might see a little bit more on this later on, but that generally is sorting eBay by price and postage lowest first, breaking out the Amex and hoping for the best. I know Narelle's sighing at that one, but you know, it is the reality of what a lot of upgrades are, unfortunately. Installation and configuration. Alternatively, I'm sure I can remember where all the screws go, how this bit goes back in the rack, etc. I don't know about you, but I'm getting older and my memory is not as good. I think having some documentation is always a great thing. Testing and commissioning is always, you know, shifting production traffic to the new gear and hoping for the best. And then handover training and documentation. She'll be right. You're all good. So I wanted to talk today about New South Wales IX and the journey from 100 gig to 400 gig. Quite a lot has happened since 2017 or so. There's been quite a lot of changes. The network was very simplistic and a ring before, and we solved a lot of problems by just adding more switches where ports were needed. It's not the best, but it got us out of a bind for quite some time, but there were a few problems with that, which we'll go into now. So we had a limited number of ports on the switches. We had a 2 by 100 gig ring, and that was just getting filled up by different links on DWDM, different intercap, different services, and members deciding that it was time to move from 10 to 100 gig. In some cases, it's starting to seem that 100 gig is almost the new 10 gig. We're starting to see that go up quite a lot, and 10 gig just tapering a little bit. Inner switch links were good, but DWDM was expensive. We have big boxes. Those big boxes aren't being used to their full capacity. They're a waste of space, they're a waste of power, and there's some things that we could do. We did try fixing a few problems with some circulators, and Matt Kay will have a couple of stories if you ask him about that I'm sure he'd love to go into. And the ring, more issues, but we'll go into that properly. And some of the other problems that we were having were just running like a simplistic design. Whilst it is a good thing, it took away a lot of the features that would have been helpful in quite a few circumstances. LACP hashing has always been a big issue for us, and the new platform resolves that quite well, but we need to start getting members to migrate over to that new platform with those big ports, but that's a problem for, you'll see soon down the track. So starting off with the port density, we were filling boxes really quickly. We'd fix problems by putting new boxes in place and just adding more and more capacity to the ring. And as you'd see, it was very, like, you fill switches really quickly. You end up having 16 ports of your 32 port box being used for uplinks, which doesn't give you much room for member traffic, which means you've suddenly got 5 or 6 boxes in a rack. just to get by for the port counts that you need. But then given the smaller interfaces, you have hashing issues going on, and you can't move a 100 gig flow from one member on one switch to another member on another switch whilst the traffic is already sitting at 50 gig on a link. It's just annoying with these hashing issues. The lack of ports made it harder to just keep adding links. We had to find a way to fix that. So we had 40 channels of PAM4 between SY1 and S1 and S1 and global switch. We're only using 2 channels on that system. A lot of wasted space, a lot of wasted power. The optics were expensive. We could get them cheaper from a third party. They were new, but they're not from the vendor, not really supported in the platform, but they do work. The ring was a good start, but the issues on the ring were there were certain circumstances where, say, in SID1 and SID3, if you dropped the link between SID1 and SID3, or if you upgraded the boxes at the edge of SID1 and SID3, traffic would hairpin from Sydney, from Equinix all the way back to Global Switch and then to S1 and then back out there and all the way back up. So you're taking a really long path and you're wasting a lot of capacity on the backbone that is running quite hot anyway. So we had to fix that as part of this as well. And circulators, we use them to solve problems quickly when we needed things getting solved, but we probably are not going to go down that path again. I think Matt will talk to you for hours on them if you want to listen, but they just cause too many problems. On the legacy protocols and the simple designs, like that graph there is the LACP hashing issue that I was talking about. That was a port back in 2019 for a relatively large ISP that doesn't like peering anymore. And with 15, 16 gig of traffic on the link, it doesn't hash nicely at all. And the solution to the problem for them had always been to just peel traffic off peering and move it to transit or force people to buy transit from them. Unfortunate thing, but it's always just like that platform issue with the boxes. Because it's just in VPLS and it's only looking at the inner tag, so it's only looking at the outer attributes of the packet, it can never hash on the inner, so you're always getting essentially the same source destination for everything, which kind of sucks, but bigger ports are a problem. But we also see this at 100 gig ports and people running dual 100 gigs, but the knobs are getting a little bit better, which is good. We don't have VXLAN support on some of the older boxes, which means there's no easy path to move to a new design. A lot of those boxes did have to come out. They were hitting like 8-9 year lifespan. We're still getting software upgrades, so not too worried about them, but it's just time that they got replaced. They were 110 gigs, etc. It's old and not fun and slow. The platform is OSPF, MPLS, and VPLS in a full mesh design, but the lack of auto configuration for pseudo wires and the lack of BGP signaling causes config issues. It causes missing BGP peers. It's annoying to bring up new switches, etc. To plug a new switch into the network, you had to jump into 50 other switches and configure 3 or 4 different VPLS instances. There's a lot of repeated config and a lot of things that could potentially go wrong there. I know I did that slide backwards, so sorry, it would have been better in the other order. But it's very clear that we need to do an upgrade of some kind. Lots of stuff is not right and needs to be fixed. So looking at the problem statement, like there's a lot happening here, and I don't know about you, but I don't have a spare unicorn in the toolbox. We basically needed everything from the new thing. We need integration with VPLS. We need, or a way around that. We need higher speed interconnects so that we can move more traffic when members with 100 gig ports do big flows to each other. Thank you, game updates. We need higher density 100 gig ports for peers because now they're starting to consume a lot more than they were before, and 3200 gig ports in a single box is just not cutting it, especially when you only get 8 100 gig peer ports out of a single box because you're using half of it for your backbone uplinks anyway. There's no room to actually put peers in. Need to remove legacy devices and some old code. All the old code is gone. Legacy devices are going, if not mostly gone now. I think there's 2 or 3 left in Sydney, maybe 1 in Sydney and 1 in Brisbane, 1 in Adelaide, or a couple in Perth. They all need to go, and they're going slowly, which is good. They should all be gone this year. We need to move to newer protocols and a newer design so that we can do some better traffic engineering for members. We'll be able to actually look at packets coming, well, not look at packets, but like build hash decisions based on the inter bits of the packet instead of the outer bits, that will always hash to something that's actually different instead of hashing to the same value because it's a different source destination there, generally internally in the packet. And the other consideration is we need to ensure that the IXs remain stable and secure. We, for a long time, have not caused broadcast storms, and I'm touching as much wood as I can possibly touch while saying this, and we want to keep it that way. We have very strict filters on every single port within the IX. We have very strict policies on peering, and we drop absolutely everything that shouldn't be passed across, and it needs to stay that way. And that's a very hard requirement as part of our upgrade. And boxes that can talk VXLAN and VPLS would be nice and act as a gateway between the two for future upgrades and later migrations. However, there are other solutions that vendors talked us into for quite a while, which we might go into later. So I have left this page intentionally bland. Board papers, procurement, and tenders, the fun part of all of this. We had a really large Word document that had a 75-point acceptance criteria for a new switch to enter the net, for a new switch, new vendor, new model, new software code, etc., to enter the network. And we were very rigorous around how we accepted a switch to come in. We met with 3 different hardware vendors, and they all were able to provide a solution to the problem. We ended up proceeding with labs with 2 hardware vendors. One vendor was not able to meet the price point, and the platform, we had to basically buy the latest and greatest from them with the best license to get one of the features. I can't remember what that feature was. There was one feature that required a license that was just going to make it unobtainium. One vendor failed their integration testing after what seemed like a forever amount of time in their lab, just based on the fact that a port with a layer 2 attachment circuit that points to a VPLS could not have MAC filters on there, and you couldn't actually filter any bad traffic that you don't want, which means that we'd be at the mercy of everyone's dodgy spanning tree configs, or at the mercy of everyone's dodgy broadcasts that they want to push through. Without the ability to filter that traffic as it comes in, we potentially would run an insecure platform that would be susceptible to broadcast storms. And that was a very hard requirement. We failed that vendor just on that one point out of that test plan. There was no if, buts, or maybes. They weren't able to provide a solution to the problem. And it was unfortunate because they would have been, I mean, we're happy with where we are now, but it just made it harder because it was a long time in the lab. And at the time that we did this, they did support VXLAN and VPLS and that pathway between the two, which was quite nice. And the last vendor that we met with, which is the vendor that we went with, didn't actually support VPLS at the time that we ordered the server, or ordered the boxes. Sorry, at the time we were doing a lab with them. They gave a solution around EVP and ESI multi-homing that would have worked quite well to provide redundancy from, at least in New South Wales, to get multiple links in. But they also supported MPLS, which would have allowed us to still act as a PE node for the other IXs without removing those redundancy things. Other vendors wanted us to do NNI links with tagged VLANs between the two to share things over, and then obviously spanning tree becomes a nightmare and other bits and bobs, and it's just not suitable. But with MPLS-P support, we were able to work around those requirements. So in 2022, Turbo, thank you very much. I can see you are in here. I got this lovely email from an account manager from our tech contact at Arista, saying that we can now do VPLS on the boxes. So scratch that last year of the drawing board and the testing and the planning, and we have to start again. we were already at iteration 5 or 6 of the board paper from that point in time, and we just had to, you know, basically start from scratch at the last minute. So what does it look like now? We have a much better design. We don't have single points of failure around the ring anymore. You can perform an upgrade to a box in SID 3 without affecting the entirety of the traffic across the network. It just moves to the other path, which is quite nice. So we've ended up with a much better design. We've ended up with dual 400 gig links out of each site, which has essentially doubled the capacity of what we could support and just allow us to move all of that traffic around, which is good. And I do note that this diagram is missing a link. There should be an extra link between there and there, but I'll get that updated. So moving forward, what's next? We've done a lot of planning. We've removed quite a lot of old kit. That's still slowly happening as time goes by. We had a very long lead time on the 400 gig equipment from 2022 to 2023, or the end of 2023, when it finally got installed. So you can see all the band-aids that we had to put in place just to cope with that, essentially a year and a half of being able to do nothing apart from band-aids. We're at the point now where we're testing and looking to migrate to EVPN VXLAN. TAS-IX has been deployed as EVPN VXLAN, which is quite nice, and it'll be good to get it all integrated and the rest of the network built back up to that. Then obviously you rinse and repeat for every IX back to the planning stage and keep going down the path and adding boxes and getting bigger links, etc. And then, you know, the cycle never ends. Next time, 5 years, 10 years, I don't know how long it's going to be at this point. Start getting 1.2 terabit ports, or I don't know, maybe 2.4 or something a bit bigger. So we'll see what happens. And finally, there's just some photos that I wanted to show of how much work, even just specifically in SY1, had to happen. There's 8 boxes as they arrived. We had to pull out the old 14RU BDX8 and clean up some of the cabling at the time. And it's quite fun having to do that essentially live with minimal downtime. If I could have my way and do it over again, I'd rip out every single cable for 8 hours and replace them one by one. Whereas through here, you know, you pull out 4 cables and you replace it with a PSM breakout, and you just have to do 4 at a time, but you can't remove the old ones until you're done. I think specifically in SID1, it's not the best cabling is completed, but it's not the worst that I've seen either, which is okay, but we're still working to sort through that. You can see the BDX8 when it was live, literally every single port on that BDX8 was moved to a single X870. Just hiding up in the top there. And then as it finally got pulled out, we were able to put some nice big shiny aristas in with some 400 gig ports and cable them in a nice redundant form. And that is me. So thank you very much.
Oh, brilliant. If anybody, I think we do actually have some questions in the Q&A. A couple of comments I want to make, though, first of all, out of that presentation. I think it's really important for everybody to remember that, in essence, you think that an internet exchange point is a pretty simple thing. It's a dirty, great big switch where you connect a whole bunch of networks together. But actually, there were a couple of things that Nick said in there that I think are really super important. We run uncongested, we run stable, reliable, and secure. So it's actually really quite a specialised area and a specialised type of network that requires a fair bit of, well, a lot of rigour and a lot of testing and analysis to make sure that what we do runs rock solid and appropriate to the conditions. So, yeah, even though there was a whole lot of, oh my gosh, the excrements about to hit the turbines, especially adding 100 gig links after 100 gig links after 100 gig links, we really did go through a pretty rigorous process there, and I think Nick has outlined that beautifully. Let me just jump over to the Q&A and see what we've got here. One question that's come through is any particular feature / price, etc., that had you pick EVPN VXLAN over EVPN MPLS? Now that's let's not get into a religious discussion here, but
It,
why
very,
VXLAN EVPN, Nick?
we're still definitely testing and playing with both of them. We're not completely sold on the solution at the moment. We have deployed and tested in Tasmania just to see what it's like and what the go is. But as time goes on and we get the older boxes out of the network, we'll be able to look at it. There's no particular rhyme or reason, like apples, oranges, pick a poison and, roll with it. MPLS has been strong for quite a while, but you can do a lot of,
There is that balance of tried and true versus new.
yeah, you can do a lot of
Yeah.
rerouting of IP and if it's just not MPLS as well. And that's part of the problem that we have with the current hashing issues at the moment is like it's even routing IP on the underlay is tricky and annoying because we don't have the knobs for MPLS on the boxes that we have where we do have the knobs for IP. So it makes sense to just wrap everything in a IP packer versus throwing MPLS headers on it where we can actually do some better engineering around it.
Okay, are there any other questions, folks? Now you've got maybe a minute and a half. If there's any other questions on the amazing process that we had to go through, there was really 6 months worth of testing and capacity was starting to fill, and we ended up putting boxes on order that got hit COVID supply times. Gee, it was a really fun time, wasn't it, Nick?
Yeah, it was lots of fun.
Yeah, and
Quite
I
a little bit of
do have
stress,
to.
but we
Yeah,
got
yeah. Yeah, and I do have to mention the effort that the rest of the team went to in there too, supporting it. Aaron in particular doing some amazing unraveling with one of the vendors who, if I recall correctly, swore blind that certain things worked, and in the lab there was no way that even Aaron turning himself inside out and unpicking the entire
correct. There was
find it to work.
three
Yeah, yeah,
months of splitting hairs over that
yeah.
lab session that we just couldn't. Yeah, and then that it was finally admitted that it wouldn't work and it wasn't a planned feature and wouldn't be possible on that hardware. So, it's straight in the bin, unfortunately. But
Yeah, but we really do take this IXP stuff seriously, folks. So feel free to give us your thoughts on that. So look, let's now jump over to our other presenter, and that is our board chair, Matt Enger. And I have to point out that Matt was asked to speak not because he's our board chair, but because he's got an interesting project that we really would like to hear about. And he's gone through some amazing effort to grow his network. Matt, if you recall, gave us a presentation a year, or is it 2 years ago now?
2 years ago.
Wow, building an ISP on a shoestring. And I was pretty amazed then at the sorts of things that he was doing with these tiny little boxes that really in a past life I would never have even looked at running a network. But hey, he did it and he made it run really super reliably. So he certainly convinced me. I think I'll just hand straight over to Matt and he can tell us about his the way he's been growing his network. So Matt, if you want to pick up the screen sharing.
Yep, just doing that now.
And folks, once again, put your questions into the Q&A and we'll make sure that they get fed to Matt. If we can't answer them today, then we'll make sure they get answered into the future.
Okay, hopefully you can see the correct screen.
Indeed. Thanks,
Excellent. Thank you, Narelle, and thank you, Nick, for your presentation as well. So yes, I did a presentation about 2 years ago on starting an ISP on a shoestring. So this is a bit of an update on the journey I've been through so far and where we're up to today and some of the fun I've had along the way. So I'm going to cover our journey. I'm going to cover our routing changes where we moved from MikroTik to Arista, BNG moving from MikroTik to Juniper, some capacity planning and fun that I've definitely had in that, and also talk a bit about what I call our darkest day. So our journey. So this was what the rack looked like in Sydney prior to, just as I was finishing the presentation in November 2020. So we had 10,000 customers approximately nationally. I think it was about 8,500, 9,000, where we're using MikroTiks for landing our customers. They were all PVPoE, And then we had basically edge routers, as I called them, which basically had a single upstream service on it, whether it be Ethernet exchange, whether it be a transit provider, or some other P&I. And then we had what I called a border router, which basically did all the routing between the customers' BNGs and the edge routers to get them across to the correct spots. Worked really, really well, was mostly stable, I would say. Occasionally microtics reboot, which is always fun, but at least they come back quickly. But it was working and getting there. We're just starting to run into issues with capacity. So our growth looks like this. So this was as of yesterday. And we're sitting currently up here at just about 34,000 customers. So designing a network to deal with this growth has been the challenge. So a standard day, we are now peaking at about 120 gigabits, and on game days, we hit 160, although I think that would have been more, and I'll explain a bit more about that later. So this is us today. This is our rack in SY1, the same rack. We're actually just starting to deploy our new Arista here. As you can see, Mark is hiding in the background there. He's joined our team, so it's no longer just me plugging stuff in. Yes, as you can see, our rack looks very different. So, routing. So this was a photo I had in the last presentation. We were starting to look at the Arista 7280s for our routing and switching. And we were starting to look at the Juniper MX5s to take over our BNG functions. Why? Microtics and full route table is really slow. And 10 gig links between devices, we just start to run out of capacity, or we start doing lots and lots of hashing, which, as Nick kind of indicated in his presentation, doesn't scale that well. So we needed a proper switch that can do the routing in the background so that we can actually move along forward. And these Aristas that we moved to had 600 gig ports. Like, I'll never outgrow that. That'll be awesome. So this is our Queensland rack. So we moved from all of that, and as you can see, we've actually added the Arista in down the bottom here. So we've stuck it in and then moved the cables around. And you can see all the ports have come off these two border routers up here, and we've moved them down to the Arista down the below. So all of a sudden, we're making use of the backplane on the Arista to do the traffic movement. And oh boy, did our life get easier. This allowed us to do something which I've really wanted to do for some time, which was introduce a second transit provider. So I talked about full table being needed and being slow on the MikroTik platform. So if we wanted to introduce a second transit provider, we needed to be able to do full table and do it fast. Our current transit provider was optimizing the routing from Sydney, which meant our WA customers, in some cases, were routing back to Sydney to go over cable when there was a nice cable hanging out the back in Singapore, to Singapore from WA, which would have saved them a lot of latency and delay, but we couldn't get anywhere with it, so had to look at alternatives. So we brought on a new company. So how did we get it? Each state got a second 10 gig link to the new transit provider. Work with the new transit provider to not send our prefixes to Australian providers so that we can make use of both transit networks. We had a contract with the old provider that we needed to make sure we make good use out of. Use communities on the old provider to turn off sending internationally. And then the result was a massive improvement in latency internationally. And we really started to see an uptick in customers after that point, because customers were all of a sudden playing their games overseas and going, you guys are worth looking at. So it would actually result in a lot of happy feelings from everybody. But each Arista had a direct BGP relationship with each other, which meant that we had lots and lots of copies of full tables floating around the whole network in a full mesh, plus 2 transit links. So you end up with like 7 or 8 full tables going into each run. Didn't work too well. And Brisbane eventually decided, uh-oh, I don't like this. And we didn't notice it, but we hadn't upgraded the firmware on that one to quite the same version. And bang, we kept losing convergence. So that was not a fun night. So I flew to Brisbane with a spare 7280 in my bag, just in case. Sat in bed, plugged into the out-of-band network, VPN'd into it over my mobile, because I was staying somewhere which actually used my NBN service, so I couldn't actually stay on their network. Basically did the firmware update, watched it, it worked. I can tell you though, that was one of the longest 10 minutes of my life waiting for it to install. But once it rebooted, it was all happy again. So thank God, that was nice and easy, and all my planning of bringing up spare parts wasn't needed, but at least I was there in case it all did go pear-shaped. We then cleaned it up, introduced route reflectors in Sydney and in Melbourne, and basically reduced the number of relationships between our devices significantly. And the route reflectors are actually really cool. They use OSPF as well to actually look at the costings of the routes and actually send back to the various locations the relevant routes rather than sending back all the routes. It actually cleans it up and optimizes the network really, really well. So a lot less full tables, but also smart full tables being sent, not just random rubbish. So it was really, really cool. Moving on to BNGs. In November 2020, I said that we were starting to look at MX5s. They can handle more subscribers. Each unit can handle about 2,000 subscribers on it. I will say that when you try and do an update on them with 2,000 subscribers on it, you do sort of sit there watching your keystrokes go on, but they actually do work. And importantly for us, they started to support IPOE, which was quite critical for us because Opticom Network supported it for us at the time, and we were keen to move forward for that because we were doing 1 gig connections. We separated out the CGNAT from the BNG function, and actually we were just reusing the MikroTiks that were previously doing the BNG just to do CGNAT. And the MikroTiks were really, really happy about that because they stopped rebooting on us. It was absolutely awesome. So why Juniper? Well, if you're running an ISP on a shoestring and you've only got basically your own funds to do it, it was cheap, it was available off eBay, although eventually I did end up moving to grey market suppliers rather than eBay because I wanted 20 of them, and it meant that I got assurance of quality of them. I looked at Cisco on the grey market, but it was just too expensive. A friend recommended, and he got roped into helping me set it up. And in the end, he pointed me towards Fraser, who actually kind of joined our team. So hi, Fraser. Thank you for all the help you've done and getting us to this point. But I've had to learn Juniper because I had never used Juniper before in my life. So Sydney, all of those devices, so the bottom 4 particularly, which were BNGs, got turned into that. And all of a sudden we could handle probably 3 times the subscribers that we could before. So lots of cleaning up, lots of nice no more sleepless nights, random reboots, things were looking good. Challenges. Juniper BNG is like a secret society. Trying to find documentation on it is quite challenging. So you really do need to find somebody who knows it and get them to help you with it. IPOE was particularly difficult. There was lots of examples on PPPoE, but IPOE was hard. MX80s are very, MX5s are very heavy to put into your racks. I don't recommend installing them by yourself, although I have done it too many times. If you do have to do it, I suggest you put a MikroTik below it and slide it on top. They make good shelves. Plus side, by the end of 2021, we deployed it. I was sleeping a lot better because the network was more reliable, more stable. My support staff were happier because they could tell customers use DHCP, no PPPoE passwords, and they were getting online. And our growth had accelerated and was starting to take off. So we were looking at the next thing. MX204 plus the CCR2216. This is our current solution for BNG. 2,000 subscribers started to become a problem. MX80s are old and they start to fail. I was actually opening them up and replacing USB headers in them to keep them going. And we're just like, this does not scale over the growth we're having. What is the proper solution to do this? And we actually basically contacted Juniper, and Juniper basically looked after us and did us a good deal with the MX204s. And post-COVID, the actual supply chain on them is really, really good. So that combined with the MikroTik CCR2216 doing CGNAT, I can tell you as of last night, because I actually had to test this, we did 30 gigabits of CGNAT traffic through one of those MikroTiks, and it was basically sitting at about 50% CPU. So they can actually pump through quite a bit of traffic. So pretty cool stuff and very, very fast and stable. Here you can see our first design template where we're using a Cisco Arista 7050 switch with 40 gig ports because 100 gig stuff was just still a little bit too expensive just to take this away from the 7280 at the bottom, and it was working really, really well. So lots of DAC cables at 40 gig. And the good thing is that the MX204s and the CCRs can all move to 100 gig later, but just by replacing all the DAC cables. Before I forget though, I'll mention Quick. Everything seems to be going quick, and Cloudflare plus Quick plus CG NATs with MikroTiks running the older version of their operating system. The defaults cause issues, and of course, where do they find those issues but on Whirlpool? Their website was freezing and causing me quite a bit of grief. I want to thank Cameron, who's actually watching this today, for actually doing a lot of the work and pointing me in the right direction for this. But basically, the default timer on the UDP timeout was too low. On the MikroTiks, increased it to 30 seconds. Quick then remapped quite happily because the Cloudflare server was expecting their ports to remain the same for 30 seconds, and it all just worked beautifully. So by version 7, though, I've noticed that the change on their MikroTiks default is to 30 seconds as well. So eventually they learned as well. Capacity planning. So the challenge for us has been to build the network and scaling it well, staying ahead of the growth. So we needed to look at 100 gig ports, but when to buy it, because it is not cheap when you get to 100 gig, although it's still cheaper than 400 gigs. So I guess I got that to look forward to. COVID lead times for equipment were challenging. When I was started looking at this, it was 12 months plus to actually get the gear in. So trying to do that, and we're growing at about 8% customer base per month. So yeah, we had to plan quite a fair way ahead. So when do we do it? So I looked at 2 platforms. It was the Juniper one and the Arista 72 CR3K, whatever that model is. Licensing on the ACX 7100 was good, made the option very interesting, but it basically meant that we have to keep adding licenses as we grew to unlock capacity, which meant that we would not pay so much upfront, but the longer term would have cost us. We tested the platform and ran into some issues which made us hesitant, but we felt the 7280 R3 that was being quoted was just too expensive. So lots of umming and ahhing. So I sat down, did some modeling, was playing around with a spreadsheet, looking at customers against how much traffic was going through the links between the 7050 and the 7280, because that was our bottleneck, and figuring out at what point I was going to need to upgrade. One of the interesting things I found is the more customers you have, the less per megabit you actually need on that link, because someone's obviously not accessing the same thing at the same time, so you get the spikes even out. But I was able to put some estimates in as to what I thought our growth would be and when we were going to start to need to upgrade those links. So while I was umming and ahhing about it, Arista, which I wanted, but the price tag I felt was too high, they introduced another model to me. Almost identical unit, just not quite as much capacity on the backplane, but about 30% cheaper. So I said, yeah, okay, I'll take those. I'll take 5. Oh no longer have to wait 12 months. I can have them in 6 months. Okay, can you order them here and I'll have them on this date in early 2024. Wow, things were moving forward. But then Call of Duty and Fortnite game updates just getting bigger and bigger. Came out at the worst times and we were paying death by 10 gig link. This game of whack-a-mole. So remember how I said I had 1600 gig ports currently on our platform? Well, 2 were in use by the BNG uplink to the other switch, which left us 4. And then I had game updates coming in from Akamai and Fastly, and I was basically having to upgrade links as fast as I could. Akamai seemed to love hitting me every time I had a weak spot, so I kept moving stuff around, and it was a real game of whack-a-mole. So I upgraded to 100 gig in Equinix Sydney, IAA Sydney, IAA Melbourne. Then Akamai decided to hit me over Equinix Melbourne, so I upgraded that to 100 gig. And I was really looking forward to these 100 gig switches coming in as I was running out of ports. In fact, we did run out of ports in Sydney. Thankfully, we just in time the upgrade. So this is what happened. This was the game update that came through about a month and a half ago. And you can see here that we got to about 160 gig. But what actually happened is that Cloudflare decided to join the content sharing game and started maxing out our 10 gig ports. So we had a 10 gig port in Queensland to QLD-IX, which I'd actually looked at earlier that day and gone, oh, okay, it's getting to about 6-7 gig. I need to upgrade it when we do the upgrade a month later. Nope, maxed out. Okay, fine, said Cloudflare. We'll send it to you over Megaport. Max that out too. Okay, fine. We'll have to start hitting you over transit. It was like it was trying to find any way it could to get the content to my customers in Queensland, and kept running into links that were basically just not up to it because it was such a massive shift of traffic, far beyond what we'd expected. So I rushed upgrading and putting in some 100 gig ports into Queensland. We got the Queensland IX port upgraded. We got Megaport upgraded and started doing Megaport across the eastern seaboard, and also our transit links, because we were also finding they were starting to get hit as well on these updates. We upgraded those to 100 gig. So I reckon that we would have exceeded 180 to 200 gig nationally if Brisbane had just had that little bit more capacity that night. Whew. So my lesson learned there is, even with planning, you will not always get it right. And if I'd done it again, I would have ordered the upgrades about 3 months earlier than I did. I just left it a little bit too close to borderline. But that's what our POP looks like now. So that's actually Sydney that we deployed last week. Our Sydney customers and ACT customers are landing in here. And as you can see, it looks very nice and neat. We've even put the newer 100 gig port switch up the top to try and reduce the number of fibers that we have dangling around. Still got to learn about using 1 meter instead of 2 meter patch leads, but we're getting closer to getting things tidy and neat. But we also have left the 400 gig ports at the very end empty, so that we can upgrade our capacity to 400 gig in some cases if we need to later. But there was still my darkest day. So things were positive. We had a network with capacity upgrades in progress. Business was booming. I have a network engineer coming on full time to assist me. Things were going good. I actually was reflecting that weekend coming up, I had very little work to do, which is unusual for me because I normally get to sit down and just do some things without being bothered on the weekend. Then what? Well, karma hit. In 2020, I mentioned I had a VMware cluster which we're using. It was bought in May 2019. 5-year lifespan, time to work out an upgrade plan, but it's working well, not top priority. We'll get to it after the 100 gig switch. 4 years and 11 months into it, I get a phone call, 11 o'clock in the morning, CRM is running really, really slow. Quickly identify everything system-wise as slow. VMware is reporting no issues, nor is the onboard controllers. Everything looks good, but they are performing so sluggishly, it was just horrible. I could see vSAN is on VMware doing a rebuild, but couldn't figure out why. Okay, hopefully it will improve once that finishes the rebuild. No. This was the longest week of my life. We basically went dark from about 11 a.m. onwards on that Saturday. All of our critical operations, Radius, CRM, orders, payments, phone system, website, we basically had to take offline. By Saturday afternoon, I had restored Radius to Sydney, and we had basically got customers who were authenticating back online. Most customers were not impacted. Unfortunately, those customers in Queensland who had CGNAT turned off but didn't have a static IP did have some issues because we couldn't actually identify correctly which IPs were in use, and we had some IP duplication going on, which took us a while to sort out and clean up. But everybody else was online, they just couldn't contact us, and that website looked offline. But I was still no closer on Saturday to actually figuring out what the cause was. So what was it? Well, on Sunday, Nick very graciously logged in my darkest hour, and I had a look around and quickly identified under the hood that the SSD health was showing that all my SSDs were toast. They were just burnt out. At least I now knew what was wrong and I could move forward. So what did I do? Well, Chris and I went and got some SSD drives from a computer store to replace the drives that had failed. But vSAN works by you delete the storage block on a machine, add the new block in with the new SSD drives, and it rebuilds. If I was going to go through this phase, it was going to take weeks to actually get the whole thing rebuilt. It just was not going to work. So what did we do? Well, I had a lot of help from the community here. Lots of people reached out to myself and Chris and offered us help. We ended up borrowing some old hardware and restoring from backups. I had really good backups of everything, so restored those to a new cluster, and we had most systems back online Monday by about 11, if not Monday afternoon. So we got everything back up and going. We then replaced all the SSD drives, built a new vSAN cluster, and then migrated all the VMs back. Took me about 2 weeks to get it all back up and going and back to where it's supposed to be, but finally we got there and it's all back to normal. Next steps. Well, It's 5-year-old hardware. So yes, I'm deploying a new one. I've ordered it. It arrived. It's sitting in boxes in our storeroom right now. And I'm meeting tomorrow with the person who's going to help me build it. And we're going to be going to Proxmox with Ceph as storage. I'm building my own checks for our monitoring platform if I can't find good ones to make sure the SSDs are monitored, because I'm not going to just trust what I'm being told by the onboard stuff any further. We will, once we've migrated everything off to that Proxmox cluster, reload the current cluster, the old cluster with Proxmox as well, and potentially send that up to Sydney so that we actually build a proper cluster up there. And I'm actually looking to build proper redundancy between the two sites so that if we lose one, we can keep going off the other. Learnings off that. We still need to put in place an emergency plan to bring together people if things like this happen, like an emergency management team. We communicated poorly about it. I know some of my customers are even here today watching this, and sorry about that. We certainly learned a lot from it, and we're looking at improving, and that's what our management team will deal with. They'll work with the communication, while those of us who are working on solving the problem can actually just concentrate on solving the problem. So getting a good group of people around you is important. Since then, I've now got a network engineer. I've now got another person on our team who actually is very familiar with Linux and Proxmox, all of us working together. So I won't be on my own this time. If this ever happens again, it's going to be a massive hurdle because it was extremely draining. But the piece of advice I've got there is just tackle one issue at a time, break it into small steps, keep consecutively working at it, and you will get there. Whew. So the next steps for us, IPv6. We're about to take some changes which will hopefully improve IPv6 and introduce Slack on NBN for us, because currently we only support DHCP provisioning of IPv6, but it seems like customers' routers don't want to support DHCP properly, even though they say they do, even when you tick the box. Lots of cluster works. I want to break our MySQL databases apart and actually set up replication and actually scale things just much better than they are now. 100 gig upgrades are complete, but WA is being done in November in time for an IAA Christmas party. I may have booked the date the same. Melbourne needs another BNG. We're looking at Juniper at clustering and cleaning failover handling. So we've got that as a project. Intercap upgrades. We've had 20 gig up and down the East Coast. I'm currently provisioning 100 gig links to replace those. So we'll have 100 gigs for protected between Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane. Making sure we've got plenty of room to actually handle the growth that we're receiving. Just got to work with the provider to actually hand us over the correct ports, and we might actually get the links up. And NBN, overall, eventually I'm going to have to move away from VNNI, so I'm trying to figure out at this point what this looks like, and probably will have a quite interesting journey to tell in a couple of years' time as to what that might be. So, questions?
Yes, folks, don't be shy. Throw some questions into the chat if you've got, or the Q&A or the chat if you've got them. That was a really interesting presentation, Matt. Just to see inside all the things you've had to work through. A couple of things I picked up in there was, and I did see you going through that nightmare with the VMware cluster. That was awful. And it was lovely to see the rest of the community coming together to help you out there to make sure that you could deliver continuity to your customers, because I know how much you care about them. I mean, you made a point really early on that about the importance of keeping your customers happy. There's no point in your business is not going to work if you can't keep your customers happy. I mean, that's what you're there for ultimately. And it does look like you've been doing well, you've been very dedicated in pulling together all these different solutions. I had really good backups was a wonderful thing. That is music to my ears. I had really good backups. and how many?
I had for my IT consulting days, I hate it when a customer calls me and says that, yes, a server's died. And my first question is, well, are your backups working? And have you been monitoring those backups to make sure they're working? And I make a point of trying to do that. And yeah, it's quite important to me, and I lose sleep when customers call me about that stuff. So having the good backups in place is very important to me.
And doing the occasional restore test is so important.
Yes.
Yeah, and actually, I'm gonna be take advantage of the fact that I've got screen control here too. When you talked about that fortnight update, Well, this is what we saw that night. And I've added it into my slide deck, you know, on a not so typical day here. Here is what our traffic across the exchange looked like. We cracked 1.3 terabits per second in aggregate. I mean, that was one real, dare I say, update, that one.
The software that they use at the vendors to ship out the traffic, the content providers, is phenomenal. It was like it was oozing in everywhere at you, and I've never seen it before quite like that. It was amazing to watch.
Yeah, and we try as best as we can to run uncongested, and I think we got pretty close to congestion on there as well. So I dare say
we were pretty good that night. We only hit about 45% capacity around Sydney, which was good.
Yeah, thanks to the 400 gig links in place. Okay,
Oh, yeah.
Now some questions. We've got one here that says, are you using MikroTik ROS V7? If so, how is stability?
Yes, we are. So all of the CGNAT appliances have to run version 7 on that hardware. And for just doing the CGNAT component, which is forwarding and NAT on the firewall tables, works exceptionally reliably, been really, really good. I can't comment about the other functionality that like BGP and everything else because I haven't used it. I've moved away from using that on MikroTik now. But yeah, OSPF and NAT, no problems at all. Works great.
Yeah, and it is nice when your route reflectors don't send the full internet routing table to everything, as some people have discovered elsewhere.
Yeah.
So no, this could be a tongue-in-cheek one, but in hindsight, over the years, would you still engage in the ticketing system that is whirlpool.net.au?
Matt loves Whirlpool. Matt absolutely loves Whirlpool and customer support on Whirlpool.
Yeah.
You can't really search, and it's hard to get good alerts off Whirlpool, really.
I probably shouldn't admit this, especially with some of the Whirlpool people actually finding this morning and actually probably are here. But after an outage, I do often go to Whirlpool to just check and see if anyone has reported things as part of my process. And early on, it was very, very important. But as our monitoring system has got better, it's becoming a secondary tool.
Yeah.
And like the other day, we did the Sydney upgrade, and IPv6 didn't come up properly after the migration. Someone commented on Whirlpool. I checked it before breakfast. Within 5 minutes of waking up, I went in and went, oh, you know what, someone's probably done. Yep, fixed it. Okay, done. So look, I still think that is going to be a big part of who we are because we are very much engaged in the community. And yeah, I like it. Sometimes they go crazy, but it's a fun and games, and it's a really educational experience. So I love it.
Yeah, 100,000. When you get to 100,000 customers, having that extra little bit there to get those edge cases and things that you might not know about, sometimes it is a really good way to use as an alert system. But your own monitoring system has really got to be better and richer, and you've clearly learnt those lessons too. Okay, so another one. Oh, this one's more of a statement than a question, but amazing journey. This was a great presentation and epic work getting this far. So thanks for that comment. That's lovely. Another one here. Yeah, not so much a question, but more of a comment. An emergency management framework such as AIIMS and having people trained in it makes such a difference. Separating frontline from backline so that people can work on the problem. Moving your own phone system out of your network so you can communicate makes a world of difference. Well, that's another one that others have learnt too. Making sure that you've got that out-of-band communication effectively and you know, solidly in place is super important. But again, that's as you grow, I'm sure you'll be implementing more of these sorts of things.
Yeah, and it's been part of the discussions we've been having internally, much more between myself and Chris than anything else. But definitely, like having the second cluster and splitting our phone calls, because we already land our phone calls in both Melbourne and Sydney, but it all ends up in Melbourne. So having the option of having it out of Sydney will allow us to quickly move the voice traffic to Sydney. I plan to move our website off our network completely, just so that I know that it will still stay up. And our live chat is already external anyway. And yeah, so it's definitely a good point, splitting it apart and actually handling it that way rather than having everything dependent on one. But it's the old, you've got it, so you just keep moving forward with it until it bites sometimes.
Yeah. So here is, what are you using as your route reflectors?
So when we got our Juniper licensing, we actually got access to some stuff through Juniper, and Juniper's got a very nice route reflector software in there, which has been working well for us.
Oh, okay. Okay, maybe we should look at it sometime too. Just to annoy you.
I'm sure Nick is already aware of it.
Yeah. Yeah, well, we're pretty happy with Bird and so forth. Okay, so here, ha ha ha. Thanks for all you do, Matt. Came from somebody.
I think that's one of our Whirlpool people.
Oh, thank you for joining us from coming over from Whirlpool. We do appreciate it. Please, it's a wonderful industry. Come join. Another question too. WP is, yeah, Whirlpool is good canary in the coal mine. Yeah, indeed it can be, can't it? As we see. Another question here. Do you have an ops team in the background supporting you with lots of the daily stuff, e.g. monitoring capacity across the board?
Starting to. So my ops team deal with mostly to deal with customer stuff, so dealing with logistics of getting customer support done and that kind of things. My network team, which is myself and two other people, Fraser and Mark, who was hiding in the background of one of the pictures, we are starting to do the capacity stuff. It's mostly sat with me up until about 6 to 8 weeks ago. But it's starting to be a team effort rather than just me doing it myself.
Yeah, again, it's one of those growing thing too. Oh, we've got a couple more questions come in. Yeah, thank you for the great prezzo, Nick, Matt, and Narelle. Always up for a good prezzo, Matt, Turbo. So lovely to see you drop in through. Another question here we've got. Oh, hang on, sorry, it's moving a bit in front of me. Yeah, do you have many remote workers, or are most people in the Camberwell location?
Oh wow, you really want to know about what Leaptel's doing.
I wonder if it's a customer wanting to ask every single little detail they could.
Yes. Look, most of our staff are located in Camberwell. All of our call center stuff is handled from Camberwell. We try not to do the call center stuff remotely unless somebody is ill. Just because having the people together makes a big difference in terms of self-supporting and training. We certainly found it over COVID. Isolation was the worst thing we could do for the call center. The staff who manage things above the call center, it's a combination. Some work from home on occasions. Quite often they're in the office. We have some staff who are completely remote working in, for example, WA. So it's a mixture.
Well, I'm just looking at the time here. We've gone slightly over. So I think I need to put up the compulsory last couple of slides. Thank everybody for all the questions and participation. This has been great participation. We have got acronym heavy, though, I do note in this one. Perhaps it might have been a little bit challenging in some parts for some of the folks that aren't as knee-deep in this tech as the rest of us are. But a huge thank you to everybody who's joined, and a huge thank you to our presenters. That was really, really interesting. And I really do appreciate people doing it. So other members, other ISPs around the place, please do spend some time with us. We're happy to help you. Indeed, one of the things that did come up there actually was the help that we get from the community to when we're facing technical challenges with our own network, the IXP network that we run, but also we're happy to give help as part of the community to other internet service providers. So Matt talked about one of our team giving him some help with some very obscure configuration challenges, like a timer deep inside something. So we're always happy to give some assistance to our members and to the rest of the internet industry. We're here as an industry association to support the industry, to support the internet and the people who build and operate it. So that's that is our driving principle, folks. So yeah, a huge thank you to everybody who's participated. A huge thank you to everybody who's attended. And that's it, folks. That's all.